12 years ago, my wife left the house to get groceries. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and said she'd be back in an hour. She never came back. At first, I thought maybe the car broke down. I called her. No answer. Then I drove the usual routes, past the grocery store, past the gas station, even her favorite coffee shop. No sign of her, no calls, no texts. By nightfall, panic had settled deep into my bones. I called the police. They told me to wait 24 hours, standard procedure. But I knew something was wrong, a gut feeling. You don't spend 40 years with someone without learning to read their every breath. And that day, her breath had been calm, normal, not frightened, not secretive. She didn't plan to disappear, or so I thought. Days turned into weeks. They found her car parked near a trailhead 30 miles outside of town. Purse inside. Keys still in the ignition. Her favorite scarf was draped across the passenger seat. No signs of struggle, no prints that didn't belong to her. She had simply vanished. And so began the longest, lowest death I've ever experienced. Grief is cruel when it has no buddy, no closure. People bring casseroles. Neighbors offer their condolences. But there's always this quiet suspicion, a murmur. Maybe she just left. Maybe she ran off. I refused to believe it. I spent years looking. I posted flyers. I hired private investigators. I mortgaged our home to fund searches. I aged 20 years in 5. My hair went white. My hands shook when I spoke her name. Then one day, I stopped, not because I gave up, but because something inside me shut down. I moved to a small house in the woods, far from the city. I planted trees. I fed birds. I watched the seasons change. The world kept spinning. I learned to breathe without her. And then, 12 years later, it happened. I checked the mail like I always do, expecting nothing but bills and junk. But nestled between a gardening magazine and a utilities envelope was a cream-colored letter, no return address, no stamp, just my name, handwritten if autis in this familiar script. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. It smelled faintly of lilacs, her favorite perfume, and written in her handwriting in the same looping curves I'd memorized through birthday cards and sticky notes on the fridge were the words, "Meet me tomorrow, 7:44 p.m. Home." Home? What home? The address wasn't listed, but I knew what she meant. Our house, the one we'd shared before she vanished. The house I hadn't stepped into in over a decade. And the date. It was for tomorrow. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my chair by the fireplace, staring at the letter, reading it over and over again. I smelled it, touched the ink, even tried to match it with old samples of her handwriting I kept in a box in the attic. It was hers. But how? Why now? And what the hell was she doing alive after 12 years? I tried to think logically. Maybe it was a hoax. Maybe someone was playing a cruel trick. But no one knew her handwriting. No one knew that 7:44 p.m. was the exact time our daughter was born. It was a number she'd always use as a secret symbol in notes to me. Dinner at 7:04. Meet me at 7:04. Even, you'll know it's me, 7:44. So, when that time appeared on the letter, I knew it wasn't random. I waited for the sun to go down. At 6 p.m. the next day, I drove back to our old house. The property was technically mine. I'd never sold it, but the doors had remained locked all these years. Ivy grew across the windows. Dust coated the porch. The wind creaked the wooden frame like an old haunted ship. At 7:40, I stepped out of the car. I walked slowly to the door. My hands were sweating. I didn't know what I was expecting. A ghost? A confession? A cruel joke? At 7:44 on the dot, the porch light turned on and the door unlocked, but no one opened it. My heart raced. I swallowed hard. Then I pushed the door open. Inside, the air was still. It smelled of mothballs and thyme and something else, lilacs. I took a cautious step inside. Then I saw it. On the old coffee table in the living room was a VHS tape and a portable player. On top, a note. Press play. I did. And there she was, alive. On the screen, my wife sat in a small room. She looked older. Her hair was longer, her eyes tired, but it was her. She looked into the camera. If you're watching this, it means I'm dead or I'm being watched. My mouth went dry. I never stopped loving you, she said softly, but I had to go. I had to disappear. I was protecting you and myself and him. My stomach dropped. Him? Before I could process it, a shadow crossed behind her on the video. A man, his features hidden, but she didn't flinch. She glanced at him, nodded slightly. Then she turned back to the camera and whispered, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to end like this. But you need to know, the life we had, it wasn't the only life I was living. The tape cut to static. I rewound the tape 3 times. The life we had wasn't the only life I was living. What did that mean? I sat there in silence. The portable vape player goes humming softly as it blinked to a blue screen. My heart was pounding. My head felt like it was underwater, and all I could hear were those last words. I tried to stand, but my legs wobbled. Who was the man in the background? Why did she look at him like that, calmly, knowingly? Was he threatening her, or was he with her? I walked slowly through the house, every creak of the floorboards echoing memories. Our wedding photo was still on the wall. A faded red scarf hung on the coat hook. Dust clung to the furniture like frost. In the kitchen, I found another note. Just 4 words. Don't trust the truth. The handwriting was rushed, shaky, different from the first letter. Underneath it was a key, a small brass key with a number etched into it. 12 locker, safety deposit box, storage unit. I took the key and left. On my way out, I felt eyes on me, not metaphorically, literally. The sensation prickled down my spine like cold fingers. I turned but saw nothing. Back in the car, I sat there gripping the steering wheel. The woods were silent around me, but something felt off, the kind of silence that screams. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept the key on my nightstand and the letter under my pillow like it might vanish if I looked away. I drank 2 fingers of bourbon and stared at the ceiling, going over every conversation, every detail I could remember from the years before she vanished. Had I missed signs? Had there been cracks? By morning, I made a decision. I'd find out where that key led, no matter what. It took me 2 days to trace the key. Visited 3 local banks before I got lucky. At the third, the teller took the key from my palm, studied the number, then disappeared into the back. When she returned, she had a serious look on her face. "This box hasn't been opened in over 11 years, she said. "It was registered under a different name, but your wife is listed as a secondary contact." She handed me a form I signed without reading. They led me into a private room. The metal door creaked as it opened. Box 12 was old, dusty. I inserted the key and turned it with trembling fingers. Inside was a single manila folder. I pulled it out and then sat down. At the top, a black and white photograph, my wife, with the same man from the VHS. They stood together at the table. His hand was on her lower back. They looked happy, too happy. I flipped the photo. Written on the back, J&M, Prague, 2000. The same year she disappeared. Prague. She had never even mentioned going to Europe. The next page was a document, heavily redacted. A seal at the top read, Office of Strategic Intelligence, eyes only. I blinked. What? The next 5 pages were filled with strange codes, photos of people I didn't recognize, foreign addresses, surveillance notes, and at the very bottom was a page labeled Subject, Marjorie Allen. Status, deactivated. That was her name. Deactivated, I slammed the folder shut and pushed back from the table. My breath came in short bursts. She was a spy or something else? Suddenly, it all clicked. The secrecy, the strange calls in the middle of the night, the times she'd disappear for errands that took hours. And the worst realization, the man in the photos wasn't her captor. He was her lover. I had to find him. The man in the photo, the man in the video, the one who was with my wife when she disappeared and after. I took the folder home and scanned every document. One address appeared more than once, a small house outside D.C. listed under an alias. I booked a ticket and left that night. I didn't pack much, just the key, the vest tape, the photo, and the folder. The flight felt like a lifetime. I barely blinked. By morning, I stood in front of a modest, ivy-covered townhouse in Arlington, Virginia. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Then the door opened. He was older than I expected. Silver hair, thin frame, sharp eyes behind glasses. He studied me like a man trained to assess threats. "You're him," I said. He didn't respond. "Her husband." He sighed, stepped back. "Come in." The living room was Spartan, clean, books stacked in neat piles. One wall was filled with framed maps. Another had pictures of people I didn't recognize, none of her. "I thought this day might come," he said. "You were with her?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, I was." "For how long?" He looked me dead in the eyes. "Longer than you want to know." I clenched my fists. "She loved you, you know," he added. "Even when she left you, she never stopped. But she couldn't live that life anymore, not after what happened in Prague." "What happened in Prague?" I asked. He looked down. "You really want to know?" I nodded. He took a deep breath. "She was recruited long before she met you. You were a civilian, normal. That's why she chose you. But something changed. She fell in love with you for real. That made her a liability." Liability. They gave her a choice, leave you or disappear. She chose both. I felt like I was suffocating. And you? What were you to her? I was her partner in more ways than one. He paused. She ran from the agency, from both of us. She wanted peace. Then why send me the letter? I asked. Why now? He looked toward the window. Because she's dying. She's dying, I repeated. He nodded slowly. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, diagnosed 6 months ago. My breath left me like a punch to the chest. She's in hospice care, he said. Somewhere quiet. She didn't want you to know, but then she changed her mind, said if anyone deserved to look her in the eye one last time, it was you. I sat down. I didn't even remember moving toward the chair. The room was silent, except for the soft ticking of a clock. I don't even know who she is, I whispered. Not anymore. He looked at me carefully. She's still the woman you married, but she's also someone else. Maybe. Always was. A long pause passed between us. Then he slid a slip of paper across the table. An address. Go to her, he said. I stared at the address. My hands were trembling. I don't know what I'll say, I admitted. Just listen, he replied. That's all she wants now. 2 days later, I stood at the doorway of a quiet care home nestled in the foothills of New Hampshire. Pines whispered in the wind. A nurse led me down a corridor lined with soft yellow light and the scent of lavender. Room 111, I knocked once. A quiet voice said, "Come in." And there she was, older, thinner, eyes sunken, but still her. She smiled when she saw me, a weak, genuine smile. "You came," she whispered. I couldn't speak. "I didn't think you would." "I almost didn't," she nodded. "I wouldn't blame you." I sat beside her bed. The air was still. Outside the window, a bird landed on the sill. "I need to know," I said, voice barely steady. "Why?" She closed her eyes for a moment, then began. "I lied to you for years. About my past, about who I was, but the love I had for you, that was real. You were my escape, my salvation, and that's why I had to leave. Because if I stayed, they would have used you against me." Tears welled in her eyes. "They were watching, always, even when we were laughing on the couch or dancing in the kitchen. I thought I could have both lives. But I was wrong. When they gave me the ultimatum, I ran, first to him, then from him, then into nothing." I swallowed hard. "And the affair?" She didn't deny it. "I thought he understood me better, and he did, in some ways. But it was never love. It was survival." "And me?" She reached out, fragile fingers wrapping around mine. "You were always home." We sat in silence for what felt like hours. She rested her head against the pillow, her breath slow and shallow. The machines beeped softly, counting down the moments she had left. "You don't have to forgive me," she said at last. "I wouldn't, if I were you." I stared out the window. The sun had started to set. A soft orange glow filled the room. Shadows stretched along the walls like memories too heavy to hold. "I don't know if I can," I whispered. "You shattered everything." "I know," she said, tears in her voice. "But I never stopped loving you, not even when I ran." I turned back to her. "You were my life," I said. "I built everything around you, And when you left, it all turned to ash. You didn't just leave me, you erased me. A sob broke from her chest. I wanted to come back. I tried, but every time I got close, something stopped me. Fear, guilt, the agency, a pause. You. I didn't speak. She reached into the drawer beside her bed and handed me a small velvet box. Inside was her wedding ring. I've kept it all these years, she said, even when I wasn't yours. I stared at it. The same ring I'd placed on her finger 42 years ago. I'm sorry, she whispered, for all of it. I stood up. The room felt smaller than before. I walked to the door, hand on the knob. Then I turned. I don't forgive you, I said, voice shaking, but I still love you. Her eyes welled again. She nodded slowly. That's enough, she said. She passed away 2 nights later. I was there, holding her hand. We didn't dike again. There was no need. I buried her in the place we met, under the oak tree behind our first home. Alone, no fanfare, no photos, just silence. And the ring. I still visit the tree sometimes. I bring a chair. I talk to her, not about the lies or the betrayal or the pain. I talk about the good things, our first dance, the night we drove through the storm just to watch the ocean, the way she used to hum when she cooked, the way she always said 7:44 like it was a prayer. Maybe love doesn't survive everything, but some pieces do, and maybe that's enough.